Hello and welcome. You've reached Phantom Phone Line, a broadcast of the strange and the unexplained. Season 0 is our space for crafted tales inspired by ghost stories, folklore, and more. So now let's check the messages.
Hi, this is a bit strange for me, but I've been holding this in for a while now, and I thought, well, maybe it's time to share this. I don't know if it's truly paranormal or not, but it's been with me for years, and maybe someone out there will understand. When I was about 17, my family and I moved to a small village in the countryside. My dad had taken a job in the area, and the house we rented was this old stone place near the edge of a forest. Old place, chilly even in the summer, with windows that rattled in the wind. It had a charm to it, sure, but it also felt heavy, like the house had soaked up years of life and kept it all buried in the walls. Anyway, it was late autumn when we moved in. Maybe that's why I remember the place being so chilly when I think back on it. Every day after school, I'd go on walks to clear my head, cutting through the fields and along the forest's edge. There was this dirt path that ran parallel to the trees, winding its way toward the hills. On one of those walks, I noticed something odd. It was just after sunset. The sky was streaked with orange and purple, and I was heading back toward home when I saw a flicker of light in the woods. At first, I thought it was someone with a torch, maybe a camper or a farmer out late. Curious, I stepped off the path and edged closer, careful not to trip on the roots and brambles. That's when I saw him. There was a small clearing, just big enough for a fire, and sure enough there was one crackling away. Sitting by it was a man, or at least I think it was a man. He was dressed in dark, old-fashioned clothes, the kind you'd see in those black and white photos from centuries ago. He had a wide-brimmed hat pulled low, hiding most of his face. He wasn't doing anything, just sitting there, staring into the flames. I thought about calling out to him, but something stopped me. It wasn't fear exactly, more like unease. Like I'd walked into a place I wasn't supposed to be. The air felt different in that clearing, heavier, like it was pressing against my chest. The fire made no sound, no crackling, no popping, nothing. Just silence. I backed away slowly, trying not to make a sound, and when I was far enough, I turned and ran all the way home. I told my parents about it, but they just shrugged it off. Probably a farmer burning brush, my dad said, but that didn't explain the man, or the silence. A few weeks passed, and I convinced myself it had been nothing. Maybe I'd imagined the whole thing, but that wasn't the last time I saw it. This time it was winter. Snow covered the ground, and the air was biting cold. I'd gone for a walk to clear my head after an argument with my sister. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the fields. As I reached the forest's edge, I saw it again, that flicker of light deeper in the trees. I froze. Part of me wanted to turn around and go home, but another part, the curious part, pushed me forward. I needed to know if he was real. When I reached the clearing, there he was, sitting by the fire just as before. Same hat, same dark clothes. The fire burned brightly, but again there was no sound, no warmth. The man didn't move, didn't acknowledge me, but I felt his attention, like he knew I was there. My breath fogged in the cold air, but his didn't. It was like he wasn't breathing at all. I stepped closer, just a little, and the snow crunched under my boots. That's when he turned his head ever so slightly, as if to look at me. I couldn't see his eyes beneath the brim of his hat, but I felt them. I felt them like needles on my skin. I ran. I didn't look back, not even when I stumbled and scraped my knee on a patch of ice. When I got home, I locked the door and pulled the curtains tight. My parents didn't believe me, of course. They said I had an overactive imagination, that I'd been reading too many spooky ghost stories. But I knew what I'd seen. Over the next couple of years, I saw him only a handful of times. Always in the same clearing, always by the fire. Sometimes he'd be sitting, other times he'd be standing, as if waiting for something. Once, I thought I heard a low humming sound, almost like a chant, but it was too faint to make out. The worst part was the way the forest felt whenever he was there. It was like the trees were holding their breath, like the whole world had gone still. I never got close again. I'd see the fire from a distance and turn back the way I'd come. I started avoiding the woods altogether, even during the day. By the time I left for university, I was glad to put it all behind me. But here's the thing. I can't forget it. Even now, years later, I occasionally dream about that clearing, about the man by the fire. Feels real enough I wake up with the smell of smoke in my nose, even though there's no fire nearby. I don't know who he was or what he wanted, but I know he wasn't just some camper or farmer. He was something else. At least I think he was something else. Something or someone left over from another time. Anyway, that's my story. I don't know if it's worth much. Maybe it was just a creepy guy down on his luck, living in the woodlands. Even so, it feels good to finally tell it somewhere. Thanks for listening.
All right, so I've got a story, but I don't always share it. I mean, who wants to be the person who swears they saw something they can't explain? But I heard other people calling in with their stories, and I guess I just thought, why not? Maybe someone out there has been through something similar. This happened a few years ago, back when I was in high school. You know how it is. Weekends were all about sleepovers, staying up way too late, watching dumb movies, and trying to scare each other for fun. I was at a sleepover at my friend's house with the other girls, and at some point in the night, someone brought up the idea of using a talking board. Now, I had never actually used one before. I'd heard stories, of course. Everyone has. My mom always warned me not to mess with stuff like that, said it was bad news, but I didn't really believe in any of it. It's a game, right? A piece of cardboard with letters on it. It's not real. And besides, it wasn't even a proper board. We didn't have one, so we made our own. Just wrote out the alphabet, numbers, and yes and no on a big sheet of paper, used an upside-down glass as the planchette. Classic teenage sleepover stuff. At first, it was exactly what you'd expect. A lot of giggling, a lot of accusations of, "You're totally moving it." The glass barely budged. We asked if there was anyone there, if it had a name, if the cute boys in school liked us, the usual questions. Nothing happened. Just silence, aside from the sound of us shifting around and the occasional creak of the house settling. We were about to give up when the glass finally moved. It was slow at first, just a little twitch under our fingers. We all looked at each other, half excited, half nervous. Then it slid, deliberate and smooth, to yes. Now, I wish I could say we freaked out right then and there, but honestly, we didn't. We wanted it to work. It was fun, a game, and we were all too stubborn to admit one of us was probably pushing it. So we kept going. We asked for a name. The glass started spelling something, but the letters didn't make sense. It jumped around, like it couldn't quite form a word. Then the tapping started. It was faint, a soft, rhythmic sound. We all heard it, but at first we thought it was the wind, or maybe the house settling. But then it got louder, more insistent, like someone knocking. Not on the door, not on the walls, but from inside the room. We stopped moving the glass. No one spoke. We just sat there, listening. And that's when my friend gasped. She wasn't looking at the board anymore. She was staring at the TV. It was off, but the screen was dark and glossy, reflecting the dim glow of the lamp in the corner. She looked pale, her mouth slightly open. We all turned to see what she was looking at. At first, I didn't notice anything. The reflection showed all four of us sitting in a circle. But then I saw her hand tremble as she pointed. There were 5. There was another figure sitting just behind us. I only saw it for a split second, just long enough for my brain to register that something was there. Something that shouldn't have been. A shape, a shadow. I couldn't see a face, just the outline of someone. Someone sitting too close, right behind us, watching. I don't know who screamed first, but suddenly we were all up, the board forgotten. Someone turned on every light in the room. Someone else grabbed the remote and turned the TV on, blasting the volume just to get rid of the reflection. It took a minute for us to calm down, for our breathing to even out. We tried to laugh it off, saying it was probably just a trick of the light, but I could tell none of us really believed that. My friend, the one who saw it first, refused to look at the TV again for the rest of the night. We never finished the session. We didn't say goodbye. And yeah, I know that's supposed to be some big rule. You always say goodbye. But we were too freaked out to think about that. We just wanted it to be over. After that, nothing really happened exactly. There were no doors slamming, no whispers in the night, but the house felt different, heavier, like we weren't alone. I didn't sleep much. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that extra reflection in the screen, sitting there like it had always been part of our group. In the morning, when the sun was up and everything felt normal again, we tried to talk about it, to make sense of what we saw. But no one had an answer. And the weirdest part? When we finally looked at the TV again, the angle was different. The reflection should have shown 4 of us. There was no way a shadow, a trick of the light, could have made it look like there were 5. We never brought it up again. I don't know if my friends remember it as clearly as I do. Maybe they convinced themselves it was just our imaginations. But I know what I saw. I know what we all saw. And to this day, I won't sit in front of a blank TV screen at night. I don't even like catching my reflection in windows after dark, because I'm afraid that if I ever look too long, I'll see it sitting right behind me again.
Growing up, our family had this little fishing spot out by a secluded lake. It wasn't anything fancy, just a rickety dock and a small rowboat we kept tied up there, but it was fun. My grandpa used to say that little spot by the lake had been in our family for generations, passed down through the years. He'd tell stories about how he and his brothers spent endless summer afternoons fishing there, and now it was our turn. The lake was beautiful, especially in the evenings. The sun would set behind the hills, casting this warm golden glow across the water, and everything felt so still, so peaceful. But there was always this undercurrent of unease, a sort of tension in the air that no one really talked about. The grown-ups would just say things like, "Don't stay out there too late," or "The lake has its own rules." I didn't think much of it at the time. It just seemed like one of those things adults said to keep kids in line. One summer evening, when I was about 15, I decided to stay out a little longer than usual. My parents had gone back to the cabin, and I told them I'd pack up and follow soon. The fish weren't biting much that day, but I didn't mind. I liked the quiet, the way the water mirrored the sky, and the sound of the frogs and crickets starting up as the sun dipped lower. It was the kind of peace you don't appreciate until you're older, but even as a kid, I knew it was special. As the light faded, I noticed the water getting unusually still. The ripples from the boat and the occasional fish jumping were gone, and the surface looked like glass. That's when I saw it, just out of the corner of my eye, a ripple forming in the middle of the lake. At first, I thought it might be a turtle or a big fish, but the ripple wasn't moving like you'd expect. It was purposeful, almost like it was circling the boat. I leaned over to get a better look, but all I could see was the reflection of the sky. Then, all at once, something broke the surface. A long, dark shape, like a neck, rising out of the water. It was sleek, almost serpentine, but too large to be anything normal. For a moment, I thought maybe it was a log or debris, but then it moved. Slowly, gracefully, the neck turned, and I saw something that looked like a head at the top, with eyes that seemed to catch the fading light. I froze. My first thought was to yell, but my voice caught in my throat. The thing didn't move toward me. It just watched, its head tilting slightly like it was trying to understand what I was. The air felt heavy, like the weight of the lake was pressing down on me, and I swear the only sound I could hear was my own heartbeat. I don't know how long we stayed like that, me staring at it and it staring back. It felt like forever, but it couldn't have been more than a few seconds. Then, as quietly as it had appeared, it sank back into the water, leaving only a small ripple behind. The lake was still again, like nothing had happened. I didn't wait to see if it would come back. I grabbed the oars and rowed as fast as I could back to shore, my hands shaking the whole way. When I got back to the cabin, my parents asked why I looked so pale, and I told them I thought I'd seen a big fish. I don't know why I didn't tell them the truth. Maybe I thought they'd laugh, or maybe I didn't want to admit to myself what I'd seen. The next morning, I told my grandpa. He didn't laugh, but he didn't look surprised either. He just nodded, real slow, and said, "That's why we don't stay out past sundown." When I pressed him, all he'd say was that the lake had it, something older than any of us, and it wasn't something to mess with. I haven't been back to that lake in years, but sometimes when I think about it, I still get that feeling. The weight of the air, the stillness of the water, and those eyes watching me like they were deciding whether I belonged. I don't know what I saw that night. A big snapper, maybe? I don't want to know.
All right, I've got a story for you. I know this sounds crazy, but I swear it happened. Some friends and I did the classic dumb sleepover thing. We made a talking board and tried to see if anything would happen. It felt like a joke at the time, but ever since then, my house feels different. It started small. A shadow that shouldn't be there, a flicker of movement in the corner of my eye, the feeling of being watched when I was completely alone. I blamed it on exhaustion. The sleepover had left me wired, running on sugar and horror movies, my nerves still frayed from what happened. I told myself we imagined it, that the reflection we saw on the TV screen, the fifth person sitting behind us, was just a trick of the light. A smudge on the glass, a shared case of overactive imaginations. But things started feeling off. The house was quieter than usual, but not in a peaceful way. It was the kind of silence that made me hold my breath and strain my ears, expecting to hear something just out of reach, expecting to see something that wasn't there. And then, well, that's when it started. The reflections started changing. The first time, it happened in my bedroom mirror. I had just tossed my hair up in a bun, turning to grab something off my nightstand, when I noticed a delay. I turned my head. My reflection turned just a fraction of a second too late. I whipped around fully, my heart hammering, but everything looked normal. Just me. Just my room. Maybe I was imagining things. Maybe I was still spooked from the sleepover. But then, it kept happening. I was in the kitchen making toast when I glanced at the microwave door and froze. For just a second, I thought I saw someone standing behind me. A shape, faint but there, reflected in the dark glass. My stomach flipped, but when I spun around, there was nothing. I stood there, staring at the microwave. Maybe it was just the way the light hit the surface. Maybe it was nothing? I told myself that. I made myself believe it. At least I did at first. Next time, it was the coffee table in the living room. I had just wiped it down, and the surface was so clean it practically gleamed. As I passed by, I caught my reflection, but there was something wrong. There was a shape behind me. A shadow. A figure. I stopped mid-step, my breath catching in my throat. My first thought was that it had to be an optical illusion. But the longer I stared, the more I realized that the shadow wasn't moving like the rest of the room. My reflection shifted as I leaned in, but it didn't. It just stood there. And then, as fast as it appeared, it was gone. I felt sick. The air in the house suddenly felt thick, heavy, like it was pressing down on me. It only got worse after that. I was seeing glimpses everywhere. In my phone screen when I picked it up. In the glass window of the oven. In my bedroom mirror, where I could swear I saw movement just outside the frame. I caught glimpses of movement in my laptop screen when it was shut off. In the kitchen window when I passed by at night. A flicker. Someone standing there. But when I turned to look, there was no one. That night, I slept with the lights on and a towel over my bedroom mirror. But that next morning came the worst of it. I had just gotten out of the shower, steam thick in the bathroom, curling around me as I reached for my towel. The mirror was completely fogged over. I didn't even want to wipe it clean. Something inside me told me not to. But I did, and I saw it. Not a person. Not a face. A handprint, right beside my own reflection, pressed against the glass. Large, distinct, like someone had been standing there on the other side waiting. I stumbled backwards, slipping slightly on the wet floor. My breath came in short, sharp gasps. The mirror was still foggy around the edges, my own damp handprint clear next to the other one. I wasn't alone. I ran. I didn't stop until I was in my room, shaking, locking the door even though I knew it wouldn't help. I leaned against the closed door as I tried to gather my wits. What was happening to me? Was this my life now? Why was it still happening? I knew what made it start, the talking board. But what would make it stop? We never said goodbye. That was the thought that flashed in my mind. We had started the session, asked our stupid questions, but we never ended it. We never closed whatever door we had opened. I had to fix it.
My eyes raced around the room, looking for the board we'd made that night, but by now, it was long gone. Probably discarded with the candy wrappers and popcorn bags from the sleepover. With trembling hands, I grabbed a sheet of paper and a marker. I wrote out the letters, the numbers, the words yes and no. Just like we had that night. Just like before. I grabbed a small glass from my nightstand, flipping it upside down. I placed my fingertips on the glass, took a breath. Goodbye, I whispered. As I moved the glass to the word, I waited. The air in my room felt different, lighter, normal. After a few minutes, I gathered the paper, folded it, and shoved it deep into my desk drawer. I didn't want to think about it again. I didn't want to think about any of this again. And thankfully, I didn't have to. That was the end of it. When I stare into the mirror now, I just see myself. Hopefully, it stays that way. Did the talking board really open up a door, letting something through? Or did the power of mental suggestion just show us what we expected to see? I don't know, and frankly, I don't care as long as it's behind me now, because either way, that goodbye was final for me. I'm not messing with that again, and fingers crossed, it won't mess with me either.
All right, I got a story for y'all. Since folks been calling in with theirs, I figured I would too. Maybe somebody out there had something like this happen too. Maybe they know what it was, because I still don't. This happened some years back after my auntie passed. She had a little house just outside of town, a place she'd lived in for over 30 years. It wasn't fancy, but it was hers. When she passed, my mama and me had to stay there for a bit, sorting through her things, packing stuff up, making sure the house was ready to be sold. From the first night, though, I knew something wasn't right. Now, I ain't the type to spook easy. I grew up in an old house, heard creaks and groans, been through a storm or two that rattled the windows. But Auntie's house? It wasn't just old house noises. It was something else. The first thing I noticed was the feeling. The air inside was thick, heavy, like it was pressing on me. You ever walk into a place and feel like you shouldn't be there? That's how it felt. Then came the sounds. That first night, I was laying in bed, trying to sleep, when I heard something move in the kitchen. Not just a little creak, full-on shifting, like a chair scraping against the floor. I figured Mama had gotten up for water, so I didn't think much of it. But when I got up to check, the kitchen was empty. The chairs were all in place, and Mama's bedroom door was still closed. I told myself I was imagining things. Stress, exhaustion, grief, something like that. But the next night, same thing. Only this time, it wasn't just the kitchen. I heard footsteps, not outside, not on the porch, inside. Slow, steady steps moving upstairs, across the floorboards. Now here's the thing. You could hear every little movement in that house. The walls were thin, and the floors creaked if you so much as breathed too hard. But Mama was asleep in the room next to mine, and I was right there, wide awake. So who was walking around? I didn't move, just lay there, holding my breath, listening. Then the whispering started. Soft at first, like someone murmuring just beyond the walls. I couldn't make out words, but I knew it wasn't the wind. It was low, hushed, and it was inside the house. I wanted to wake Mama, but something in me told me not to move. That same pressure from before, it was stronger now, sitting on my chest, keeping me still. And then, just like that, everything went quiet. No footsteps, no whispers, just silence. The next morning, I told Mama about it. She didn't act surprised, just sighed and said, "Your auntie never did like being alone." Now that sent a chill through me, because Mama wasn't the type to joke about things like that. That day I noticed more weirdness. Little things, but enough to put me on edge. The faucet in the bathroom turned on by itself while I was brushing my teeth. I put my keys on the kitchen counter, and 5 minutes later they were sitting on the table instead. And every now and then I'd catch a whiff of Auntie's perfume, the kind she always wore, heavy and sweet like jasmine. That night, I told myself I'd sleep with a light on, just to feel better. But I didn't even make it that far. I was laying in bed, eyes just starting to close, when I felt it. Breath, right next to my ear, not one, not a draft, breath, like somebody was leaning in close, like they wanted to tell me a secret. And then, go. A whisper, a single word, I flew out of bed so fast I nearly tripped over myself. I ran straight to Mama's room, shaking, breathless. She opened the door before I could even knock like she'd been waiting for me. I didn't even have to explain. She just nodded and said, "Pack your things. We leavin'." And we did. That night, didn't even wait for the sun to come up. We came back the next afternoon to grab the rest of our stuff, but neither of us spent another night in that house. Not long after, Mama had a pastor come out and pray over the place. A few months later, we sold it. I don't know what happened after that. All I know is, whatever was in there, it wasn't Auntie, and it didn't want us there.
Hello all. Right, so I've never actually told this story in full before. I've mentioned it, in passing, like some pub ghost story to scare the new staff, have a chuckle or two. But I don't think I've ever sat down and told the whole thing. But I still think about it a lot, and I don't really know what to do with it. So maybe this is the place for it. This happened a few years back when I worked in this really old pub. And I mean old, like it had been around for centuries. One of those places with low wooden beams, a fireplace that never seemed to stop crackling, and walls that looked like they had soaked in 100 lifetimes worth of stories. The floors creaked no matter how lightly you stepped, and if you stood too close to certain walls, you could feel the cold seeping through from whatever was buried deep behind them. The locals all had their own stories about the place. Most of them involved things moving on their own, glasses falling off shelves, the usual. Some said they'd seen a figure standing at the end of the bar after closing, just watching. But I never believed any of it. You hear enough ghost stories in places like that, and they all start to blend together. Just people getting carried away, making the past feel more alive than it really is. Or at least, that's what I thought. That night was a late one. We'd been packed, busier than usual, and by the time we started closing up, I was knackered. The landlord was doing the till, and I was finishing up the last of the rest stocking. Normally, we'd make sure everything was sorted earlier in the night, but it had slipped my mind. So I grabbed the keys to the cellar and headed down alone. Now, the cellar in that place wasn't one of those modern, temperature-controlled stockrooms. It was a proper old stone cellar, damp and cold, with these uneven brick steps leading down into the dark. You had to flick a switch at the top of the stairs to turn on the bare bulb that hung from the ceiling, and even then, the light didn't reach the far corners. The walls were rough, like they'd been hacked out of the ground rather than built, and there were these old iron hooks set into the ceiling beams. I never liked being down there, but it was just a part of the job. The second I stepped onto the stone floor, though, something felt off. And not just in the "it's late and I'm tired" way. The air was heavier, like stepping into a room where someone had just been arguing, That kind of thick, charged feeling, like something unseen was pressing in on you. But I ignored it, told myself to get on with it. I started stacking bottles into a crate, moving quickly so I could get out of there. Then I heard it. A soft shuffle just behind me. I froze. My first thought was that the boss had come down without me hearing him, but when I turned around, nothing. Just empty space and shadows stretching up the walls. I let out this awkward little laugh, shook my head and muttered something about old buildings making weird noises. But my hands were shaking when I reached for the next bottle. And then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw it. It wasn't a person. Not exactly. It was a shadow, but not the kind cast by light. It moved, shifting along the wall in a way that didn't make sense. There was nothing solid there to cast it. It was just a shape, a figure standing just past the edge of the light. Every hair on my body stood on end. I turned to face it fully, but the second I did, it was gone. Just like that. I blinked, rubbed my eyes, convinced I was overtired and seeing things. But then I felt it. You know that feeling when someone stands too close behind you? That warmth? That awareness that there's a body in your space? That's what it was. Except it wasn't warm. It was ice cold, and it was right there, breathing down my neck. I didn't think. I dropped the crate and bolted. I hit the stairs 2 at a time, nearly tripping in my rush to get out. I slammed the cellar door behind me so hard the glasses behind the bar rattled. He looked up from his paperwork and just smirked. "Ah," he said, "you've met her then?" I just stood there gasping for breath, trying to wrap my head around what had just happened. "What are you talking about?" I asked. He leaned back like he'd been expecting this. "You're not the first, mate. Staff have been seeing her down there for years. Shadows moving when no one's there. Voices just beneath the hum of the fridge. Some reckon she was a barmaid back in the 1800s, one that disappeared one night. Others say it's something older than that, something from before this place was a pub at all. Whatever it is, it likes the cellar. I didn't go down there alone again after that. If I needed stock, I made sure to grab it before closing, and if I ever had to go near that cellar door at night, I'd give it a wide berth. But sometimes, even upstairs, I'd feel it. That pressure, that sense of being watched, just on the other side of the door, waiting."
Hey there. I wasn't sure I'd call. I've been listening to your show for a while now. Always figured the people on here had better stories than me. But then, the other night, I was walking down the hallway again, and they were back. The footprints. So I thought, maybe I should just say something. Maybe someone out there's seen the same thing. Or maybe they can tell me I'm not crazy. I live in a pretty unremarkable place. One of those late 70s ranch-style houses set way back from the road. Just a big front yard, a long gravel drive, and woods all around. I like it quiet. Been out here about 5 years now. This started, I want to say 2 autumns ago, right when the rainy season kicked in. I was coming in from work, late shift at the warehouse. It had been pouring that night, steady sheets of cold rain, and I remember being soaked by the time I got to the door. Took off my boots on the mat, dripped all the way to the bathroom. Nothing out of the ordinary. But when I came back down the hall, I saw them. Wet footprints, barefoot. Not mine. They were smaller than mine, narrower, like a woman's or maybe a kid's, and they trailed from the back door all the way down the hall, right to the guest room. Clean, even prints, spaced like someone walking slow and careful. You could see the detail, arches, toes, heels. I stood there, just staring, because that back door, it was deadbolted. Still was, and I hadn't heard a thing. No creaking floorboards, no clicks or thuds, nothing. My first thought was that maybe someone had been hiding in the house. Maybe had broken in earlier in the day. I grabbed the flashlight and checked every inch, closets, crawl space, even popped the attic hatch and shone the light around. Nothing. Everything was in its place. All the windows latched. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling. I cleaned up the prints, double-checked the locks, and told myself it was a fluke. Some weird condensation pattern, maybe. Something left by me, even though I was wearing socks and never walked barefoot in the rain. But hey, logic wins, right? Only a week later it rained again, same time of night, and the prints came back, same size, same pattern, from the back door to the guest room, barefoot, human. This time I stayed up all night. Sat in the hallway with the lights off, phone camera ready. Nothing. No movement. Just the low hum of the fridge and the occasional drip outside. Come morning, there they were, fresh prints, already starting to dry. No video, no noise, just those same wet shapes, padding across the laminate. I told a coworker about it, casually, like a joke. She said maybe it was moisture from the door, tracking in weird from the storm. She asked if maybe I'd spilled water and didn't notice. Thing is, I would have noticed. I'm not the neatest guy, but I don't leave standing puddles around, you know? After the 3rd time, I called the landlord. Had him come out to check for leaks, faulty seals, pipes, mold, anything. He didn't find a thing. Told me the insulation was old, but fine. No signs of water damage, no signs of anyone breaking in. I asked if anyone had died in the house. He laughed and said no, that it had been a rental for years, and as far as he knew, all the tenants were still above ground. By then, I'd started looking for other signs, smudges on the windows, damp patches on the floorboards. I put a towel down by the door when it rained, but the prints still showed up, always starting at the door, always ending at the guest room. One time I followed them immediately, heart in my throat, thinking, God, what if something's in there now? I opened the guest room door, and nothing. Room was empty, just a made-up bed, clothes closet, a bookshelf, and an unused dresser. No sign of anything. But I swear to you, the air in that room felt colder than the rest of the house, like stepping into a basement. I started locking the guest room at night. I know it sounds stupid, but it gave me a sense of control, like I was sealing it off. Then last spring, I went out of town for a week. Just a solo trip. Hiking, camping, clearing my head. When I came back, house was untouched. Nothing weird. Until it rained again. That night, same prints, same path. But this time they started at the front door. That got me thinking. See, both doors are old wood. They swell in the rain, stick when you open them. They're loud. But I'd never heard either move during those nights, which meant if something was making those prints, it wasn't coming through the door. It was already inside. Or, and this is the part that really kept me up, it was never a person at all. I got obsessed. I started checking for drafts, for patterns in how moisture builds up in the corners of the floor. I learned that sometimes, if the floor is cold and the air warm, condensation can appear briefly on smooth surfaces. It can form weird shapes. Even foot-like ones, maybe, if enough moisture pools and trickles in the right pattern. I bought a dehumidifier. I sealed the baseboards, had new weather stripping put in. The prints didn't show up for months, and then tonight, they came back. It's been pouring steady since dusk, and just now I walked down the hall and there they were. Same size, same shape, same slow, careful steps. Only this time, they stopped in front of my bedroom door. Didn't go in, didn't double back, just stopped. I looked out the window and the rain had stopped. Everything outside was still, not a branch swaying. I stood in the hall looking down at those prints. I didn't move, didn't breathe. Then I turned on the hallway light, and they started drying almost immediately, just like they always do. So here I am, talking to your machine, because I don't know what else to do. I still don't think it's a ghost. Not really. I mean, maybe it's condensation. Maybe it's something in the flooring, or in the air pressure, or just my imagination. Maybe it's something totally explainable that I just haven't figured out yet. But every time it rains now, I leave the lights on. I close the guest room, and I listen. And if those prints ever start going both ways, into the room and back out, I don't know what I'll do. But I don't think I'll stay to find out.
I have been listening to people's stories on here and figured it was time I told mine. Well, it's not exactly mine. It's something that happened to me and my siblings when we were young. A long time ago, back in the village I grew up in. I don't usually talk about this kind of thing, partly because it sounds unbelievable, partly because I still don't know what to make of it. But listening to other stories made me think of it more. Anyway, here goes. I was maybe 8, 9 years old. Small, skinny kid. Lived in a tiny village out in the countryside. Dry fields, dusty roads, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone else's business. Not too different where I live now in that regard. We didn't have much, but we made our own fun. Played with sticks, climbed trees, chased goats. It was a good life, mostly. Now, at the edge of the village, just past the old well, there was this ruined temple. Nobody worshipped there anymore. Roof half gone, statues worn down to nubs, everything swallowed by weeds and vines. Just stone and silence. Our parents always told us to stay away from it. Said the place was dangerous. The walls were crumbling, they said. Could collapse on us. And that might have been true. Sure, but it wasn't just that. There was always this hesitation in their voices. A warning underneath the words. Some of the older folks said the temple had been cursed. That long ago, people had heard crying from inside the inner sanctum. That during the famine, someone had tried to take shelter there and vanished. Those kinds of stories. But to us kids, it was just a secret place. A forbidden place. Which meant, of course, we went there any chance we got. There were 4 of us that day. Me, my little brother, and 2 of the neighbor kids. We snuck off after chores, climbed through the broken arch, and wandered around inside the ruins. The stone was always cold, even in the hottest sun. Birds didn't nest in the cracks, animals didn't go near the place. That should have told us something, but we didn't care. The main shrine was still half-standing, a squat square chamber with dark carvings and a heavy door that had been jammed open by some roots. Inside, it was cooler, darker, quieter, too quiet. No echo, no breeze. We dared each other to go inside, see who could last the longest without running out. My brother went first,
Then one of the other boys. Then it was my turn. The moment I stepped through the doorway, just one step, I swear to you, the air changed. It wasn't just cooler inside, it felt heavier, thick, like walking into a room filled with smoke, though there was nothing there. Dust motes hung motionless in the stale light filtering through the broken roof. The stone walls were darkened with age, streaked with black and green from rain and moss, and carved with half-erased figures whose faces were either worn smooth or cracked wide open. I took maybe 3 steps inside. My sandals scraped softly against the floor, which was littered with fallen leaves and bits of broken offerings, clay lamps, a shattered copper bell. And then I heard it. A whisper. It was close, not echoing like it should have been, not distant like wind sneaking through a crack. It was right beside me, brushing against the edge of my ear, too soft to understand. Not a word, not a language, just the shape of sorrow carried on breath. I stopped moving. I didn't breathe. And then I heard it again. This time it wasn't just near. It was around me, behind me, maybe beneath me. It was like the walls themselves were exhaling something ancient, something tired and lonely. I looked over my shoulder. Nothing. Just the empty doorway framing the other kids outside, still messing around, throwing pebbles, laughing. They didn't seem to hear anything. As I looked around, I got the strangest feeling, like something else was there. I couldn't move. My skin was crawling, but I couldn't pull my feet back. Then I noticed something odd. A patch of ground near the plinth wasn't covered in leaves or dust like the rest. It looked cleared, worn smooth, as though someone or something had been kneeling there. Often. Recently. That's when the whisper came again, but sharper this time. Urgent. Like it didn't want me to leave. Like it had been waiting for someone to notice it. Someone to stay. I bolted. I don't remember turning. I just remember being outside, breath burning in my chest, knees weak. The others were mid-joke, didn't notice anything wrong until they saw my face. My brother asked if I'd seen a snake. I just shook my head. We didn't go back to the temple after that. But the stories kept coming. One of the other boys claimed he saw shadows inside the temple at dusk, long, thin figures ducking behind the ruined pillars. Another swore he heard someone calling his name from the trees when he walked past the temple road at night. And then the accident happened. Then one day, one of the village boys, he'd gone back alone, on a dare, fell through part of the floor and broke his leg in 2 places. After that, the temple had been fenced off, partly buried under weeds. Nobody went near it. I still don't know what I heard in that room. I've never been able to explain how something I never saw could still feel so aware. Could have been a trick of the wind. Could have been my imagination. I was just a kid, after all.
Hey, I'm calling in because I heard someone on here talking about dreams. Ones that feel like warnings, like something's trying to tell you something. I didn't used to put much stock in all that, but this one dream changed my thoughts a bit on the matter. So, I don't usually remember my dreams, maybe bits and pieces right after waking up, but they always slip away, you know? But this one stayed with me. In the dream, I was standing on a train platform. It wasn't anywhere I recognized, but it felt familiar somehow, like I'd been there before. It was early morning, grey skies, a bit of mist in the air, the kind that clings to the ground. The platform was nearly empty. No rush, no crowds, just a quiet sort of stillness. Except for him. There was this man standing near the edge of the platform. He wasn't looking at the tracks, wasn't checking his phone or glancing at his watch like you'd expect. No, he was looking right at me. He was tall, wearing a long, dark coat. His face, I don't know how to explain it, but it wasn't threatening. He wasn't scowling or anything like that. But there was something in his expression, something that made my stomach tighten. A kind of urgency, like he was trying to get a message across without saying a word. And then, slowly, he shook his head. That was it. No words, no movement beyond that small, deliberate shake of his head. And then I woke up. Now, like I said, I don't remember my dreams. But this one wouldn't leave me alone. I felt unsettled. Not scared exactly, but uneasy. Like I just brushed up against something I wasn't meant to understand. All morning I kept thinking about that man's face, the way he looked at me, the way he shook his head. It didn't feel like a random dream. It felt like something more. At the time, I was commuting by train most mornings. Same route, same schedule, nothing special. That morning, I was running late. I had to rush to grab my things and get out the door if I wanted to make it. But just as I reached for my coat, I stopped. I can't explain why. I just suddenly had this overwhelming feeling that I didn't want to go. It made no sense. I wasn't sick. There was no logical reason for it. But the longer I stood there, the stronger the feeling got. It wasn't panic. It wasn't fear, exactly. Just this deep, heavy certainty that I shouldn't be on that platform today. And then I thought of the dream, the platform, the man shaking his head. I told myself I was being ridiculous, that it was just a dream, that I was letting my imagination get the best of me, but my gut wasn't listening to reason. I hesitated for another moment, and then at the last second I made the decision. I grabbed my keys and drove instead. It wasn't a big deal, just a minor change in routine. I felt a little foolish, honestly, like I was giving in to something silly. But that uneasy feeling stuck with me the whole drive. Then, later that day, I found out what happened. The train I was meant to take had been delayed. There had been an incident at the station, right on the platform. Someone had been injured. I looked up the details and my stomach dropped. The description of the station? The platform? It was the exact place from my dream. I don't know if my dream was a warning or if it was all just some freak coincidence. But I do know this. After that day, I started to pay a bit more attention to any dreams I had.
Hey, g'day. Hope this is alright. Bit nervous calling in. I've been meaning to for a while now, ever since I first stumbled across your show on a night shift a few days back. I've heard some of the stories you play, and it made me think about something that happened to me a few years ago now. It's nothing massive, no bright lights or monsters, but it's one of those things that stuck with me, you know? It changed the way I look at certain things. Anyway, here it goes. So, I was about 24, maybe 25. Living real rough at the time. Couch surfing, picking up odd jobs, mostly doing day labor and late night shifts wherever I could find them. Saving every coin I could because the cost of living was just, well, you know how it is. I finally managed to find this room for rent in a real dodgy share house. No inspections, no paperwork. Just cash up front, keys in hand. Place was out the back of a tired little suburb, not really the sort you pass through unless you've got a reason. The house itself, man, it was a wreck. Weatherboards peeling like sunburnt skin, busted picket fence out the front, and the lawn was just weeds as high as your knees. I should have trusted my gut right there. But rent was next to nothing, and I told myself, mate, it's just somewhere to sleep. It'll be sweet. Inside wasn't much better. Smelled damp. There was this permanent cold, even when the sun was beating down outside. The kitchen looked like it hadn't been properly cleaned in a decade. There were stains on the carpet in the hallway, old, dark ones, like something had soaked in a long time ago. There were 3 other people living there already. Never really saw much of them, though. It was like everyone just lived in their rooms. Doors closed, locks on everything. No one's name on the mail, no real conversation. Just nods if you passed each other. It was the kind of place you don't ask questions in. The room they gave me was at the very back. Small, boxy. One window that looked out over the side fence, but the curtain was broken and didn't close properly. The carpet was threadbare, and there was this big, old wooden bed shoved up against the far wall. Heavy thin, thick headboard, carved into these swirling patterns. The landlord, a real shifty sort, told me, comes with the room, mate. Just needs a clean. At the time, I thought nothing of it. I was just stoked to have a place to myself again. Somewhere to leave my boots and not worry about stepping on someone else's mess. First couple of nights were fine, if you ignored the creaking and the occasional weird noise from the pipes. Old houses make sounds. I kept telling myself that. It was about the fourth or fifth night when I noticed something. I woke up to this sound, real soft at first. Like footsteps, but not across the whole house. Just right there. In the hallway. Heavy ones. Slow ones. They'd start way down the hall and come closer. Each board creaking in order, like someone walking real deliberate, real steady. I lay there under the covers, listening. Eyes wide open, staring at the door. They'd stop. Right outside my room. I waited, heart hammering. Expected to see the knob turn. Expected a knock. Something. But there was nothing. Just that awful heavy feeling, like someone was right there on the other side of the thin, flimsy door, breathing in the dark. Eventually, I must have dozed off again. Woke up in the morning feeling like I hadn't slept at all. I told myself it was just one of the housemates coming home late. Didn't think much of it. But it kept happening. And not just the footsteps. After about a week, I started dreaming. Weird, vivid dreams where I was standing in the hallway outside my own room. The carpet was wet under my bare feet. The whole house was too dark, like the lights were burnt out, but somehow I could see. And always, at the end of the hall, someone would be standing there. I could never make them out properly. Just a dark, heavy shape. Watching. I tried to tell myself it was just stress. Moving, new job, unfamiliar place. Probably my brain just chewing through all that. But then things started happening when I was awake. I'd wake up to find the closet door open. I know I closed it before bed. I'd even jammed a chair in front of it one night just to be sure, but next morning? Wide open. Sometimes, I'd find muddy footprints in the carpet, leading from the door to the bed. No one else in the house had boots like mine. And anyway, I locked my door every night. Double-checked it. Triple-checked it. The worst was the cold. I bought a cheap little fan heater, just trying to keep the chill off. But no matter how high I cranked it, the bed stayed freezing. Like something was draining the warmth out of it. It got to the point where I was sleeping fully clothed, hoodie, socks, everything, still woke up shivering. And the dreams. Goodness, the dreams got worse. I'd see the hallway again, but it wasn't empty anymore. I'd see myself lying in the bed, just a lump under the blankets, and the dark figure creeping closer and closer, footsteps heavy, slow, stopping right at the edge of the mattress. I always woke up before anything else happened. Always drenched in sweat, heart racing. One night, and this is the part I've never really talked about, because it still makes me feel sick, I woke up and couldn't move. I was lying there, staring up at the cracked ceiling, and I could feel it. Something standing over me. Breathing. The weight of it pressing down on the mattress. Like it was climbing up onto the bed, slow and deliberate, like it was trying not to wake me up, only I was already awake, paralyzed, trapped inside my own body. I must have blacked out, because the next thing I remember is the sun coming through the broken curtain and me gasping for air like I'd been drowning. That was the last straw. I packed up that day. Didn't even finish out the week I'd paid for. Took my backpack, left the rest. I didn't care about getting the bond back. Didn't care about explaining anything. I just left. And here's the kicker. When I moved into my next place, a tiny little flat above a bakery, with just a mattress on the floor and a fold-out chair, I slept like a baby. No footsteps. No dreams. No cold spots. It was like flipping a switch. I've thought about it a lot since then. Maybe it wasn't the house. Maybe it was that bloody bed. Old furniture carries things, right? Stories. Memories. Who knows what that bed had seen? Or maybe it's just in my head. Stress, overwork, thin walls making shadows seem bigger. I guess it doesn't really matter. I never went back. Never tried to find out who'd lived there before me, or where the bed ended up. Some things, you're better off leaving alone, you know? Anyway, sorry for rambling on so long. Thanks for the show. Makes the night shifts a bit less lonely, hearing other people who've seen things they can't explain.
Hey, yeah, not sure exactly how to start this. I don't usually call into shows or anything like that, but hearing some of the other stories people have shared, especially about animals acting strange, it kinda stirred something up in me. Something I hadn't thought about in a long time. So, here goes, I guess. I grew up in a small town. Dusty little place, dry fields, dirt roads, you know the type. Not a lot to do, not a lot to see. Folks there, they take the old was seriously. Not in a churchy way exactly, more like superstitions passed down. Warnings from the older generations. Things you used expected to know, to respect. One of the big ones is about owls. Everybody there knows, if you see an owl hanging around your house, especially at night, it's bad. They say it could be a bruja, a witch, watching you. Some say it's a curse, some say it's a sign that someone is working magic against you. Either way, you don't mess with it. You don't talk to it. You don't look at it too alone. You definitely don't try to scare it off. You used to stay inside, say your prayers, and wait it out. When I was a kid, I thought it was just stories. Stuff to scare children into behaving. But then I lived through it myself. This happened about 4, maybe 5 years ago now. I was in my early 20s, just moved into my first place alone. Teeny little house, used a rental, I didn't have much money, didn't really care. It was on the edge of town, kind of isolated. Bit up porch, a sagging fence out front, a big mesquite tree shading most of the yard. I remember thinking it felt good to finally have my own space. Quiet. Private. First couple weeks were fine. I was working long shifts at a warehouse, late nights, long hours. I'd get home after midnight most nights, dead tired. First time I saw it, I didn't even think much of it. Pulled up, headlights washed over the fence, and there it was, a big owl, perched right on one of the fence posts. Pale-looking thing, almost silver or as colored under the street-lit glow. Massive wings tucked tight, head used slightly cocked to one side, looking right at me. I remember thinking, weird, but nothing more. Animals are everywhere out there. Next night, same spot. Sitting there like it was waiting for me. Didn't move when he drove up, didn't flinch when he slammed the truck door. Just watch. Third night. Fourth. Fifth. Always the same. Around the fifth night, he started feeling it. This. Unease. Like pressure in my chest whenever he saw it. Like he wasn't used being watched, but measured. Giant, maybe. He started doing little things without even thinking about it. Parking closer to the porch. Keeping the outside light on all night. Pulling the curtains tight before he went to bed. Leaving the TV on low for background noise. And then, the dreams started. At first it was just weird stuff. Being lost in masses, doors that wouldn't open, endless staircases. Classic stress dreams, right? But then they got worse. I started dreaming of being in my bed, frozen, unable to move. Hearing winds brushing against the outside of the house. Scraping noises at the windows. 11. I swear, I dreamed, or maybe it wasn't a dream, that I saw the silhouette of that owl standing at the foot of my bed. Not flying. Standing. As tall as a man. The weirdest part? Every single time I woke up from those dreams, it was 3:17 de la mañana without fail. I started keeping my phone face down because I didn't even want to see the time anymore. During the day, everything seemed normal enough. I kept telling myself it was stress, maybe some kind of delayed sickness. But at night, the air around that house just felt heavy. Like walking into a room where two people just finished our argument. Sick. Unwelcoming. After about 2 weeks of this, I finally mentioned it to one of the old neighbors. Lady lived 2 houses down, kind of a quiet lady but known for being real traditional. I barely got half wardrobe explaining when she cut me off. Told me to stay right there. She went inside and came back with this little bundle, a red glass bag tied with a string. Inside was salt, some dried herbs, a tiny wooden cross, and a little mirror about the size of a coin. She said to sprinkle salt along the windowsills and doorways. Hang the cross inside above the front door. Put the mirror facing out the window where he saw the owl. And whatever it did, if it came closer, do not speak to it. Don't even acknowledge it. If you speak to it, she said, you open the door. That night, I did what she said. Felt stupid, honestly. Walking around my young house, tossing salt, muttering prayers I barely remembered from childhood. But as soon as I finished, I noticed it, the house felt lighter. Not better, exactly, but less heavy. I peeked outside, and for the first time, the owl wasn't there. I barely slept, half expecting it to come back. But it didn't. Next night, no owl. Night after that, nothing. I started to relax. I even laughed about it with a buddy from work, told him it must be just being a stressed out bird nesting somewhere nearby. About a week later, I decided to clean up the backyard a little. It was overgrown, messy. Figured it would help clear my head. I was pulling weeds near the fence when I saw it half buried under the dirt. A teeny glass jar. The kind you use for spices. Only this one was filled with dried herbs, a scrap of red glass, and what looked like hair. Black hair. Twisted together and tied with thread. I didn't touch it. I knew better. I grabbed a shovel, carefully scooped it up, and buried it way out past the property line where the mesquite trees grew thick. Tossed a little prayer over my shoulder, just in case. After that, things went back to normal. The heaviness lifted. The dreams stopped. No more scratching, no more 3:17 wake up. I moved out not long after. Found a better place closer to town. Never went back to that house. And to this day, if I'm out late, driving some empty back road and I see an owl perch somewhere it shouldn't be, to still, to aware, I don't stop. I don't slow down. I don't even look at it directly. I just kept moving. Anyway, yeah, that's my story. Hope it helps someone else out there. Thanks for listening. And, maybe keep an eye on the windows tonight. Just in case.
If you have a story to share about something unexplainable, check our website at www.phantomphoneline.com. We've reached the end of the line for now, but stay tuned for more messages next time. The views and opinions expressed are those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily reflect those of the podcast producers, affiliates, or sponsors. This content is intended for entertainment and informational purposes only, and is not a substitute for professional advice or services of any kind. Listeners should exercise caution, seek professional advice if needed, and are encouraged to draw their own conclusions. Viewer listener discretion is advised. Some content may be disturbing, sensitive, or triggering to certain audiences. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, or to real events or locations is purely coincidental. Some parts of this content may feature elements that were created, altered, enhanced, or modified using digital production tools, techniques, or other advanced production methods, including synthetic or automated processes. All content is the property of Phantom Phone Line and may not be reproduced, distributed, or transmitted in any form without prior written consent.